Good morning, everyone. I'm back with another video, and today we're discussing some major statements made by Woody Johnson regarding Aaron Rodgers' future. Right now, this is a huge topic of discussion, and I also want to share my thoughts on some decisions going on around the league. Now, I know it's usually Mock Draft Monday, but after two back-to-back crazy weeks, we might need to pause the mock for now. But don't worry, we'll get back to it soon. For today, we've got bigger updates that we need to discuss first. So, Woody Johnson had an interesting conversation with Brian Costello before the Jets' season finale, and also shared some comments with SNY. Let's jump right in, and first, let's talk about Woody Johnson's thoughts on Robert Saleh. He was asked whether he regretted firing the Jets' head coach. Here's what Woody had to say. "No, not at all. I was very sure that I was making the right decision. I didn't do it to spark anything or for any other reason. I just knew everything I needed to know about that situation." Now, hold on. This statement contradicts some of his earlier comments when the firing actually happened. Let's go back to when Woody first spoke about making the change with Robert Saleh. He directly mentioned wanting to spark a new energy and a positive shift for the team. He said something like, "This change will bring new energy and positivity that will lead to more wins starting now." That's a pretty strong contradiction, right? At the time, he seemed to think this move would bring immediate improvement. So, what are we really dealing with here? Woody Johnson's recent comments are trying to downplay the decision he made earlier in the season. He also went on to say how proud he was of this specific team and how excited he was about the potential for success, especially considering the talent on the roster. But again, that brings us back to the key question. Did this firing really lead to better results? Now, I'm not totally opposed to the idea of firing Robert Saleh. Though, obviously, I can't speak for everyone. Some fans might feel differently, and that's totally valid. But realistically, when you look at the team's performance and 12 losses, it's tough to argue that a coaching change midway through the season had a massive impact on the Jets' final record. Now, let's talk about the Jets' record after the change. With Robert Saleh fired mid-season, did the Jets' performance drastically improve? To be honest, not really. The final record was still 5-12, and the team still ended up performing below expectations. If they had kept Saleh, would they have done any better? Maybe, but I don't think they would have gone 10-7 or anything like that. If we're being realistic, maybe they'd have gone 7-10 again, which wouldn't have been a huge difference. Think about it. If the team was really going to turn things around, it would have happened with the new coaching staff in place. The firing of Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas wasn't some magic fix. So, even though some people might say this decision gave the Jets a spark, it didn't lead to a miraculous turnaround or anything close to what was expected at the start of the season. And then there was the whole situation with Breece Hall. After the game, Breece went to social media and shared his thoughts. The general sentiment was pretty clear. It's tough to win when both your coach and GM get fired in season. But let's take a step back. Those same guys were there for the last 2 years when the team went 7-10 and 7-10 again. What was the excuse then? Why weren't we talking about these struggles earlier in the season or even the years before? And sure, you could argue that maybe firing the coach and GM midway through the season had some impact, but I think the issue goes deeper than that. It's not just about one coaching change. The Jets' problems have been more systemic, and just blaming it all on one decision doesn't give the whole picture. I know a lot of Jets fans are frustrated, and I get it. It's hard to see your team perform the way they did this year after so much anticipation. But when we look at the bigger picture, the changes made mid-season didn't create a new winning culture overnight. The reality is, this team still has a lot of work to do to turn things around. Moving on to the bigger picture, let's take a closer look at what Woody Johnson said about Aaron Rodgers. This is one of the most significant statements he made recently. When asked about Aaron Rodgers' performance, Woody Johnson said that, from a numbers perspective, Rodgers did okay. But, of course, he added, except for the most important number, winning games. Now, that's a pretty straightforward way of saying that despite some decent individual stats, Rodgers wasn't able to lead the team to victories. Woody also emphasized that the decision about the quarterback moving forward would be up to the coach. He said that it would be a very important job for the general manager and the coach. That's exactly what I've been saying all along. This decision shouldn't fall on the owner's shoulders. If Woody Johnson truly believes that, then he needs to stick to his word. The general manager and the head coach need to be in sync on this decision. It shouldn't be a matter of the owner making the call. It's about the football people in charge making the right choice for the team. Now, there have been rumors swirling that Woody Johnson doesn't want Rodgers back. If that's the case, then he really shouldn't be the one making the decision about whether or not Rodgers stays. The general manager and coach need to be able to make this call without any outside influence, especially not from the owner. If the general manager and the head coach want to bring Rodgers back, that's their decision and it should be respected. It should be a partnership, not a power struggle. From what we've seen in recent weeks, there's definitely a feeling that Aaron Rodgers might be done with the Jets. Some of his comments have made it seem like he's ready to move on. He's said things that suggest he might be looking at other options or potentially retiring. I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be shocked if Rodgers decided to part ways with the Jets after this season. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to discredit anyone who thinks Aaron Rodgers should stay. There are some valid arguments for keeping him around, and if you're one of those people, I totally get it. But personally, after everything that's happened this season, I just don't see Rodgers coming back. Of course, that's just my opinion, but I would be surprised if he's back in a Jets uniform next year. Now, let's talk about Woody Johnson's thoughts on the recent Athletic article about him. Costello asked Woody about the article, and Woody didn't hold back. He called it a smear campaign and claimed that it wasn't based on any truth. He denied any involvement of his son Brick Johnson in the Jets organization, saying that Brick has no formal role and doesn't have a title within the team. That's where things get a little tricky. While it's true that Brick doesn't have an official title, we've all seen the videos of him being in the locker room and being around the team more than just a casual observer. He's been seen with Woody in various settings, and there's even footage of him being called into the locker room and handing a game ball to Garrett Wilson. It's hard to believe that Brick is completely uninvolved when he's in these situations, and it's unbelievable that he'd be willing to go along with it, interacting with the players and showing up with the team during key moments. I'm not saying that Brick is running the team or making major decisions, but it seems pretty clear that he's more involved than Woody wants to admit. To be honest, I think this is one of those situations where Woody Johnson is trying to downplay his son's influence within the organization, even though the evidence seems to suggest otherwise. So, while Woody may want to dismiss the article, it's tough to buy that Brick is just a completely passive bystander in the Jets' day-to-day activities. Moving forward, let's take a look at some of the statements Woody Johnson made right after the Jets' final game. He was asked about the team's performance and how it stacked up to the high expectations that were set for them at the beginning of the season. Woody acknowledged the disappointment and said, "Everybody thought this was going to be unbelievable, but we didn't live up to that early opinion of virtually everybody." Now, while it's clear that Woody was disappointed, he seemed to focus more on the fact that the team had high expectations from the media and fans. He mentioned how the Jets were in primetime games and how a lot of people had really high hopes for them. But let's be real, no matter how many primetime games the Jets were in, their overall performance didn't meet the hype. Sure, they had some bright moments, but in the end, a 5-12 record doesn't exactly scream success. And then Woody goes on to praise the players, saying how proud he was of them and how they showed up, fought hard, and did some nice things. It's good to hear him acknowledge their efforts, but at the same time, it's hard to ignore the fact that the team underperformed when it mattered most. You can't just shrug off a disappointing season by saying the media was too optimistic about you. At the end of the day, the record speaks for itself. With the offseason now upon us, it's clear that the Jets have a lot of decisions to make. Woody Johnson, as the owner, has said that the team's leadership needs to be aligned, and that includes the general manager and the head coach. As of now, the Jets are the only team with an open GM spot, which could be a good opportunity for them to get their front office in order and start building for next season. On the other hand, there's been some drama over in Jacksonville. The Jaguars decided to fire Doug Peterson, but kept Trent Baalke as the general manager. It's surprising, honestly, because you would think both the coach and GM would go if the team underperformed, but it looks like Baalke survived yet another coaching change. That's one less problem for the Jets, who are now in a position to potentially bring in the right general manager without having to compete with too many other teams. Over on the Giants' side, the news is that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are both staying on board for another year. The Giants are holding on to their current leadership for the 2025 season despite the lack of a top-tier quarterback prospect. It will be interesting to see how they navigate the draft and whether they can land a quarterback who can finally turn things around for them. As for the Jets, they have already begun their interview process for the GM position. One of the names being considered is Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. The Jets are scheduled to interview Glenn via Zoom in the coming days. This is an important step, and the right hire could be crucial in setting the tone for the next season. With Black Monday in full swing, a lot of teams are making decisions that will affect their future, and the Jets need to stay on top of these changes. The hiring of the right GM, along with the potential move at head coach, will dictate how the team performs in the next few years. It's clear the Jets need a major shift, but whether that happens under the current leadership or with new blood in the front office remains to be seen. For now, we'll continue to follow all the developments and keep you updated on the latest Jets news. The next few weeks are going to be huge for the team, and it's all about making the right moves to set up the Jets for success. So, with all of this going on, the Jets are in a critical position. The hiring of a general manager and the decisions surrounding Aaron Rodgers will be pivotal. Will they stick with Rodgers or look in a new direction? Will they make the right moves during the offseason to set themselves up for better results? Only time will tell. One thing's for sure, the Jets have a lot of work to do if they want to make next season a successful one. But for now, that wraps up our look at the latest updates from Woody Johnson and the New York Jets. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you all next time for more analysis and news. Stay tuned for more content coming soon.